How's it everyone? This is Lolcohol with my League starter for 3.24. It's a Lightning Strike Raider. I am super excited to be playing this. Lightning Strike, one of my favorite, actually it is my favorite skill in Path of Exile. I've played it a bunch of times. I absolutely love this skill. It has a whole lot of crafting opportunities, not only throughout the campaign, but in the end game. Also, the way it plays is just super satisfying and fun. You're getting those Herald of Ice explosions. You're just spraying projectiles all across the screen. I also wanted to make a build that is nice and tanky, that's also a mapper. I'll get into how we get that tankiness later on. But before we go on, before I sell it too hard, this build is not beginner friendly. I'm gonna say it again. Big disclaimer, if you are new, or if you are even inexperienced, if you haven't played an attack-based build or League starter before, do not play this, please. You are going to have an absolutely miserable time. There's a lot of knowledge that you need to have in order to progress smoothly. You're gonna have to do a lot of crafting. You're gonna have to make sure that you're upgrading your gear at the right time. So this is only for people who know what they are doing. If you play this and you're new and you have a bad time, don't blame me. I've warned you. But with that out of the way, this guide, it does include a detailed spreadsheet. It also includes a detailed POB. And then I'm thinking of also doing a full Act 1 to 10 campaign run if you would like to see it. And if I get time, please let me know if you do want to see that. Also, I'm not sure if I want to stream it or do it offline just by myself. So again, let me know, should I stream it, then upload the VOD, or just do it all offline? So for those of you who are still here, all the resources are there. I've done my best to provide as much information to give you a good time with the build. Anyway, I have both sold it and undersold it. Let's get into the build. I will go in depth on the build, but let's just hop into a map. I want to show you how this build actually plays. This is a corrupted 8 mod map. The gear that I have currently, this is what I would consider kind of, for me, day 3. For a less experienced player, this might be like end of week 1, week 2, depending on how much you have to play. So, good mapper, as you can see. Few buttons. It's a melee build, but it's nice and fast. It's satisfying to play. Hopefully this looks fun because I love this skill. It's just so good. I'm going to go into detail shortly. There's a couple of mechanics I need to explain, primarily to do with single target. So while we are on our way to the boss, we have Val Lightning Strike and we have Val Haste. These are both very important for single target, especially during the campaign. So during the campaign, you want to run into every single Val side area you find because you want to get that early Val Lightning Strike. Val Haste is also great. Now, let's talk a little bit about single target because like all melee builds, it's a bit of a pain in the butt. You can't just hold down one button. There's a bit of setup that is involved. So firstly, Val Lightning Strike, what this does is it drops a little orb on the ground that attacks. It does your Lightning Strike along with you. We can get 2 charges of this, that's great. Also, Val Haste, this gives us increased attack and cast speed during effect. Also, Ancestral Protector, this grants us more attack speed while it's active. So what we want to do when we get to a boss, you want to drop your little totem, and then you want to hit your Val Haste, and you want to hit your Val Lightning Strike. You can also, if you want, use Focus, but let's just show it off here. Also, we are using EB. I'll go into this later because I know it's a bit weird. Pop on the Blood Rage. Can't put Focus on left click this league, so hit that, hit that. I'm actually just going to use one Val Lightning Strike. So this is part of the reason why pinnacle bosses are a little bit of a problem on this build early on, because we are relying quite heavily on our Val skills to nuke stuff down. I'm just going to use one Val skill for this. And now for this final phase, I'm probably going to have to slow it down in post, but there's something to do with positioning with Lightning Strike where you can get a double hit. So you want to stand a little bit away from the boss until you see those 2 beams. There'll be a beam above the monster and a beam above you. If you're in the right position, it's normally just like a little bit back from the boss. That's when you're getting that double hit on Lightning Strike. That's very important. So single target, again, this is why I'm saying it's not a beginner friendly build. You need to drop your totem, you need to hit your Wrath Aura, you need to hit your Vol Haste, you need to hit your Vol Lightning Strike, and then you need to position yourself properly. These things, they become extremely intuitive very quickly. It's not something you have to think about. Probably by the time you get to the end of campaign, not gonna have to think about it at all. It just comes naturally. But these are the things we need to do if we want to play a melee build. We need to use our totems and stuff. So I've explained the double hit. I've explained how to do the single target. This is kind of the day 3 gear, which I will go into shortly. But let's talk about how do we get from Act 1 up to this point. And I have a detailed spreadsheet to explain it, but let's get into it. So now we have the basic functionality of Lightning Strike out of the way. Let's quickly talk about leveling. Again, let me know if you want to see a full campaign run through. I will go through it. But Act 1, we're using Galvanic Arrow, then moving into Rain of Arrows at level 12. Tree is going to look something like this. Initially, we're pathing down. We want to grab Precise Technique as soon as possible. The way this works, 40% more attack damage if accuracy is higher than maximum life. Never deal crits. This is a lot of damage, but you are going to have to make sure that your accuracy is always higher than your life. You can do this. You push C, go to Offense, and then you click your skill. You go down here to accuracy rating 2323. I have 4182, so in this case it wouldn't work, but on this version we are going crit. But for the campaign, Precise Technique, that's how it functions. So at level 22, we are going to be swapping to Venom Gyre. And this is System Player Lost's tech, and it feels super good. So once we get this ambidexterity node and allocate this 60% increased damage while wielding 2 different weapon types, we're going to be using a claw and a dagger. Now, I have included a loot filter based on System Player Lost's one that you can find in the description. That will help you find a claw and dagger before you get to this point. You want to have those pre-prepared. Also check vendors and all of that. Use essences on claws and daggers, but have to use claw and dagger if we want Venom Gyre to work. So let's quickly talk about Venom Gyre because the way it functions is interesting. There's a few tips that I can give you. So the skill, it shoots out projectiles and then these blades return to you. You can see those little straight lines, those are returning to me. Those then build up Venom Gyre blades as charges, which we can get up to 30 of. And then when we whirling blades, it releases them. So for bosses during the campaign, end of Act 2, Act 3, maybe Act 4, you're going to be using this and you need to be a bit thoughtful about it. You don't want to just be spamming and releasing, spamming and releasing. You want to hit the boss, hit the boss, hit the boss, wait till this gets up to 30, release. Then hit the boss, get it up to 30 and release. That's basically how it works. For killing mobs, you can just, fly past whirling blades, very easy. Then around level 38 toward the tail end of Act 4, that's when we're going to be swapping over to Lightning Strike. So we're going to be using our main skill good and early on this build. Primary things we need before we go Lightning Strike. Firstly, multi-strike, very important. Lightning Strike feels terrible without multi-strike. So we get this at the end of Act 4 after we open the gates for Diala. Then we also need this node over here, this attack mastery, non-Val strike skills, target 1 nearby additional enemy. This is what helps us get that double hit that I demonstrated a bit earlier, but we need to get this and multi-strike before we make the swap. The swap is pretty much a straight 1-to-1 from Venom Gyre. The only thing that's different is now you can use a claw and sword or a claw and dagger. But you can see this is like level 40, 41. These 2 nodes over here, this accuracy, you may not need to take these. I've just added these in because of Precise Technique. I would get at least 1, but keep an eye on your life and compare it to your accuracy to make sure that you are getting the full benefit of Precise Technique. So that's when we swap over to Lightning Strike. Now for the gem links on Lightning Strike, firstly, most important, you need a 4 link and you need a green socket and you need a red socket, minimum. The other colors don't matter as much. So early on, I would recommend getting green, red, green, and then any other color. Green, red, green is ideal because early on we want to pop in a Pierce support. Very shortly after getting Lightning Strike, we are allocating these 3 points. Projectiles pierce 2 additional targets and 1 additional target. So we're getting that pierce just 4 levels after allocating this. And then what we can do is swap this out for added cold damage. But let's say you get green, red, blue, red. What you want to do is green, red, blue, red. If you get green, red, green, green, you can do that. But yeah, as long as you have a green and a red, you're good. Now, another important thing to note is this Claw Mastery. Inherent attack speed bonus from dual wielding is doubled while wielding 2 claws. We want to swap into this when we can. The upside to this Claws of the Magpie Wheel will affect both of our claws, and this mastery essentially gives us 10% more attack speed. The downside is that now you are limited to just using claws, so the potential items that you can find on the ground or use is much more limited. You can no longer use a claw or a sword, but it's well worth it. When you allocate this, it feels super good. Rest of the tree, it's all laid out, starting maps and then heading into this. Now, while we're looking at the tree, let's talk about the Ascendancy Raider, because I know a lot of you thinking, Raider, that's kind of cringe. Why? Well, the main reason is just the quality of life and the comfort that comes from this class. So firstly, Quartz Infusion, 40% spell suppression and phasing. This is huge, relieves a lot of pressure from the tree and gear. Then we have Avatar of the Veil, 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments while phasing. We're always phasing because of Quartz Infusion. We can get very easy elemental ailment immunity, especially because later on we're taking this full wheel, which grants us another 20% chance to avoid elemental ailments. So we just need another 30%. I'm not taking this first. SPL recommended we go this first, but I feel this route is better early on because we are going to be using Purity of Elements in early maps, so we don't need to worry about elemental ailment immunity. Also, we're getting max frenzy charges over here, and then Avatar of the Slaughter, which grants us evasion rating, movement speed, and attack damage per frenzy charge. So by the time we hit maps, we're sitting at 5 frenzy charges. You can do the maths on this and see what this is granting. But Raider, I tested Champion. Raider just looked and felt so much better to me on League Start because of these nodes, just that amazing early quality of life. Now, further progression into maps. Initially, we're going to be sticking with Precise Technique while we are on a 5-link, but later on, once we get a 6-link, and I would prioritize getting that 6-link, we are going to make the swap to Crit. With Crit, we have a slightly different tree, got a few respec points, but the damage jumps up quite significantly once you get that 6-link. Also, Sniper's Mark, we're going to start using Assassin's Mark instead. Grants us more crit multi and crit chance and power charges. Also, it was not nerfed in 3.24, so your damage will feel totally fine in yellow maps if you're keeping up with your gear, but later on you will want to make that swap. Also, while we are still going non-crit, I recommend going dual claw and keeping the inherent attack speed bonus from dual wielding is doubled while wielding 2 claws. Later on, probably around red maps, we are going to take that out and use a shield to try and get that 30% elemental ailment avoidance. When you get your Uber Lab, that'll make you elemental ailment immune and allow you to drop Purity of Elements and Eldritch Battery. Now, this is controversial. Everyone who looked at this build was like, why are you using this? What this does is it allows us to use energy shield instead of mana to use our skills and abilities. Now, why are we using this? Few reasons. Firstly, spending energy shield is a lot better. It relieves pressure on our mana because we don't have to worry about prefixes minus mana costs that all attack-based builds need on League Start. Then the other thing, and the most important thing, is it allows us to have a Divine Blessing setup. So Divine Blessing, it allows us to cast an aura as a temporary aura, but it has a mana cost. In this case, an energy shield cost. So EB, not only does it solve our mana issues, but it gives us essentially a free 50% aura on top of it. Obviously temporary, but the uptime on it should be very good. This then allows us to run Grace, Determination, Herald of Ice, Defiance Banner later on if you have enough reservation and precision, giving us crit chance and accuracy rating. Now, we don't need a particularly high ES pool to run this Wrath. You can see it's about 279 in game. What is it? 353, 248. So about 350 ES is enough. And then early on, something we can do is take Ghost Dance. This means that when we get hit, we're going to gain ES up to 3% of our evasion rating. And we have a lot of evasion rating, so if you get hit, your ES pool just shoots straight back up to maximum. Now, another important part of the build, and kind of part of the reason I eventually went the Eldritch Battery route, is Perseverance. 1% increased attack damage per 200 of the lowest armor and evasion rating. This grants us a ton of attack damage once we start scaling our armor. And on this build, you can see can get up to about 46,000. We can even get a bit more, but Perseverance, huge for the build, gives us a lot of damage. It allows us to simultaneously scale defenses and damage. And then another thing, melee hits which stun fortify while mapping, this should be at 20. You should always pretty much have 20 fortification. Bosses that won't really proc that often, which is why I've turned it off in the PoB. But as you can see, if we put on our fortification, our EHP goes up even more. Let's go over some of the rest of the gear. There's a few things to talk about. So for non-crit, we just need to get a claw with good attack speed and elemental damage. And then, like I said, initially we're going to go dual claw until we do our Uber Lab. But then what we need to get is a shield. And this is going to help us in a couple of ways. Firstly, if you get a shield like this, it will provide energy shield, which will help us to sustain our Eldritch Battery. It'll give us enough of an ES pool if it's rolled well. These kinds of shields, actually, you can make them with ROG pretty easily. You can also often buy them on the trade site for a fairly affordable price. I don't know about next league, but ROG is MVP for us this league for making claws and also making shields. Important mod on this, we want to get chance to avoid elemental ailments. We need at least another 30% to reach that 100% cap. You can get a bit on your shield. You can also get a bit on your armor, but just make sure you're getting that extra 30%. Then when we swap to crit, we're going to move away just from as high LE DPS as possible into a claw like this. Couple things we need to talk about this. Firstly, if you can get a fractured crit strike chance, that is massive because this scales the base crit chance of the claw, which gives us a much higher chance to crit. So prioritize this crit instead of crit multi early on. As you can see, this has a base crit now of 8.63. Then we want to have at least 2 elemental modifiers on it. So the way I would craft this would just be to get that fractured base and then hit it with an essence of wrath or essence of hatred or anger until you get a second elemental damage mod, probably at least tier 2. Now, other modifier, hits can't be evaded. This early on is excellent. It means that all of our hits will hit regardless of how much accuracy we have. So this is wonderful. We no longer need to worry about accuracy on the tree. Auron gear relieves tree pressure, relieves suffix pressure. So early on, this is really good. You can find this craft by unveiling weapons from Vegan. And this I would try and get when you swap over to crit. Later on, when we get more accuracy, we can go for like a triple LE claw or for double LE plus pen. But this is very important early on. It lets us not worry about accuracy at all. The rest of the gear should be pretty straightforward. We're getting non-bar strike skills, target 1 nearby additional enemy, and pierce on our gloves. Also, we're getting pierce on our helmet. This will give us +2 pierce, which allows us to drop these 3 points on the tree. As for Blizzard Crown, you can just go for a normal non-Blizzard Crown. This will allow us to get increased mana reservation efficiency as an implicit, freeing up a suffix. But Blizzard Crown is really good if you can get it. However, the downside is you will need to use Essences of Loathing to get enough mana reservation efficiency. Next is our chest, and a very important modifier on this is flat armor during soul gain prevention. This is really good because the way it works is it gives us a huge chunk of flat armor, and then that scales with our perseverance. And then if we turn this off, you can see soul gain prevention, our armor is 46k. Turn it off, it goes on to 31k. So it's a hell of a lot of armor. The reason I've turned this on in PoB is that when you approach a boss where that damage really matters, you are going to be doing soul gain prevention because you're going to be dropping your Val Lightning Strikes and your Val Haste. So this is actually a fair thing to have on in the PoB. Obviously, while mapping, you won't have it up all the time, but I do recommend, pushing your Val Haste or Val Lightning Strike here and there just to get that huge bonus. Boots like this are not going to be as easy or cheap to craft next league because of the changes to Veiled Orbs, but pretty straightforward. As for the Amulet, early on, just a normal Amulet, you want to prioritize getting stuff like accuracy, life, resistances, elemental damage with attacks, all of that stuff. And then later on, we're going to get a nice crit amulet. This is actually very easy to make. I will do a crafting guide for it early on. We're allocating Arcing Blows, which grants us Lightning Pen and lightning damage with attack skills. Then the rest of the gear, the Taming, this grants us a whole lot of resistances, chance to freeze, and then increased damage with hits and ailments per free shock and ignite on enemies. We have a very, very consistent at least 2 ailments that we're applying to enemies, which is why I have this. Even bosses, you're always going to be applying at least 2 elemental ailments to the boss. So we're getting 40% increased damage from that. I've gone over Perseverance, Flasks. Please pay attention to your flasks. They're really important. But now let's talk about Brutal Restraint versus Lethal Pride. So in the history of most attack-based builds, they're almost always going to be using a Lethal Pride, not a Brutal Restraint. However, Brutal Restraint provides a ton of really cool stuff. Projectile damage, Alchemist Genius when you use a flask, getting stuff like evasion rating, elemental damage, attack cost speed, crit chance, increased effects of non-cursed auras from your skills, increased crit chance. This is great. However, you can absolutely use a Lethal Pride, and there's a couple of benefits to this. There are tons of good mods on a Lethal Pride, and unlike Brutal Restraint, this will grant us strength on all of our small travel nodes over here. So you're getting strength, and this build does need about 155 strength, so very important. But stuff on this that's good: Intimidate, double damage is huge, max life, chance to intimidate, totem damage doesn't really matter, but there's a lot of good stuff: increased armor, max fortification, and also chance to do double damage. And this is hitting a lot of nodes. So if you want to go Brutal Restraint or Lethal Pride, it's up to you. I'm not going to leave a list of ones that you need to search for because it'll just brick the market. There are videos that explain how to find one that's good. You can find a list of good modifiers in the spreadsheet. Go find one. But this flexibility is great, that we can use either a Lethal Pride or a Brutal Restraint. Now later on, we are going to be swapping to the Devouring Diadem for a couple of reasons. Firstly, this saves us a ton of points. We're getting that Eldritch Battery without having to path all the way up here. So I'm planning on farming Katarina early on. I want to get this ASAP, but this allows us to fit in a large and medium cluster. Thank you to Turtle for recommending this, but this grants us a lot of extra damage. We're getting Martial Prowess, Wind Up, and Fan of Blades. You don't have to get these exact ones. However, I would recommend Fan of Blades. Wind Up is also really good, and Martial Prowess, always very nice. And then for this, Quick Getaway for crit chance and attack and cast speed, and then Pressure Points. Crits have a chance to deal double damage. Crit chance, very good, and grants us a couple of nice little jewel sockets. So when you can, I don't know what this is going to cost on League Start. Might be expensive, but might be a ton of people running Katarina and not a lot of people using this helmet. So maybe it's a bit cheaper than expected. Something important to note when you do equip Devouring Diadem is we need to remove this Evasion Mastery. 15% chance to suppress spell damage if equipped helmet, body armor, gloves, boots all have evasion rating. This does not have evasion rating, so we're losing 15% spell suppression. This does grant us a ton of energy shield too, making our ES pool much bigger. But that's pretty much the build. Now my friend Turtle, he has also done a big min-max lightning strike build that I will link in the description, the PoB. I haven't gone as min-max as he has. This is a League starter, so I will link his in the description if you want to see the full potential. But this build can scale all the way to just deleting Ubers and doing whatever kind of content it wants. Let's talk about some of the gems that are important. So Lightning Strike is great. Nightblade, this is huge. This is why we transition to crit. This just gives us tons of crit chance, tons of crit multi. But then Trinity, this gem, it looks super confusing when you first look at it. It's not that confusing. So the way Trinity works is when you hit an enemy, the elemental damage type that hits for the highest amount will generate resonance for the other two elements. So let's say we have fire, cold, and lightning. Now you hit an enemy, it deals 10 fire, 10 cold, 50 lightning. You're going to generate resonance for fire and cold because lightning hit for the highest amount. Now that'll generate resonance for 2 elements out of 3. Now we want resonance for all 3 elements. So what we need to do is make sure that sometimes lightning is hitting highest and then sometimes fire or cold is hitting for higher. So when fire procs, it'll generate resonance for lightning and cold. When lightning hits highest, it'll generate resonance for fire and cold. So when we have max resonance, we're getting a lot of elemental penetration, elemental damage, more elemental damage. This is big. So how do we do this? How do we make sure that we are generating max resonance? Well, over here you can see when you get this full wheel, you are at max resonance and getting the full benefit of Trinity. This should not be a problem. It really should not be hard on this build, even during the campaign. You can use Trinity and you're pretty much always going to be max resonance. However, just in case you are not hitting max resonance for whatever reason, I want to explain how to help get it. So as you can see on this, we have deals 274 to 19,455 lightning damage. So lightning has a very, very wide range. So sometimes it's going to hit for very high and sometimes it's going to hit for very low. However, we also have 519 to 445 cold damage. So with this, what we want is kind of a wide range thing and then a more narrow range thing. So sometimes lightning will hit for 300 and our cold will hit for 3,000. And then lightning then will hit for 12,000 and our cold will hit for 4,000. That'll generate resonance. Shouldn't be a problem, but you do want to make sure that you have that low high with lightning, which should always be the case, and then a second element, either cold or fire, with at least a maximum amount that sits sort of in between. But just keep an eye on the left hand side of your screen. Make sure you are generating resonance. If you're not, what you probably need to do is craft some flat cold or flat fire onto your gear. Early on, we are using anger and not wrath for this exact reason. We want to get some of that increased fire damage instead of lightning damage. If we get wrath too early, we're never going to generate resonance. So hopefully that explains it. If you have any questions, I've explained it in the spreadsheet. It shouldn't be a problem. But Trinity, really, really strong. Now another gem that I do want to go over, which is really strong and also helps us generate this resonance, is Volatility Support. Supported skills deal more maximum attack damage and less minimum attack damage. So lightning inherently has a wide range. This is going to make it even wider. It's going to make the maximum way higher and the minimum way lower. Same for our other elements. So this is just such a great gem for lightning builds. If we take it off, you can see our max lightning is 86624. You can see this range is much more narrow, but with this in, we're getting that nice sweet spot where the cold is sitting in the middle of the lightning. But I believe that is going to be it for this video. If you feel I missed anything, do let me know. Check in the description for the POB, also for the spreadsheet. Join my Discord server. I'm going to set up a channel specifically for this build so that we can help you if you're going to play it. Again, if you're a new player, don't play this. You're going to have a horrible time, especially this league. The campaign, this league is going to be brutal. I don't think a lot of people realize that. It's going to be super hard, and if you're not experienced, you're going to have a terrible time on this build. If you're looking for something a bit more simple, I have put out a Blade Vortex guide, which is much more beginner friendly. But for all of those of you who are going to join me on the Lightning Strike journey, I'm super excited. I'm really, really excited. I haven't been this thrilled for a League Sort build in a long time. So I will be streaming League Sort. Also, let me know again, would you like to see a full campaign playthrough where I go from Act 1 to 10? Would you like to see it streamed and then uploaded as a VOD, or just a solo Lolcohol thing, just me, no chat? I think that's it. Right, have a wonderful day everyone. Stay safe, catch you in the next video, and if you play this build, good luck.
Exile, you're making me nervous.